on this episode of Rebel Spirit Radio.
What we suggest for guests that come to reunion is to let go of these expectations of what this might be like, right? Oh, I've heard this is an amazing trip and I'm going to see all these images and I'm going to be in outer space and, you know, just let go of that and really just go into this as a place of surrendering into what is it that you need, and be open to that. You know, there's no way in my first journey with ayahuasca I would have said, let's deal with my dad issues. You know, at the time I was 53, I'm 57 now. At the time I was 53, I thought I dealt with all this, right? So I wasn't going to Costa Rica to deal with some trauma around my childhood, you know. But that's exactly where I needed to be and what I needed to start this journey on. So, you know, I'd really suggest to people the medicine gives what we need, not what we think we want, and to let go of all these expectations and stories. Most of us spend a lifetime with all these stories and expectations, and the medicine's really a chance to just let go of that and trust.
Welcome to Rebel Spirit Radio, exploring the frontiers of spirituality, consciousness, the esoteric, and humanity's sacred relationship with the living earth. I'm your host, Nick Mather, and in this week's episode, I'm joined by Brad Wells, founder of Reunion, a nonprofit plant medicine retreat center in Costa Rica. Brad shares his life-altering experience with ayahuasca and how the medicine reunites us with who we are at our core. He also discusses the specialized retreats offered at Reunion, including the Cultivating Pride retreats, designed exclusively for the LGBTQ community. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you use to listen to or view podcasts. Your support is truly appreciated. More through grit than brilliance, Brad Wells built multiple successful companies over his career. Attempting to prove self-worthiness, he had a drive to succeed, sacrificing much in the pursuit of achievement. Somewhat unexpectedly, he had the opportunity to experience ayahuasca. A transformative shift occurred in his view of life, of business, and most profoundly of himself. Plant medicine has led Brad along an incredible, challenging, and yet rewarding path. He has learned that to live more authentically, sometimes one must make decisions that will hurt their heart to heal their soul. Brad's experience with plant medicine provided the opportunity for him to accept his identity as a gay man, something he had known for as long as he can remember, but buried deeply. For Brad to live more authentically, he decided to come out. His life has changed dramatically since. He sold his company, together with his wife concluded their 25-year marriage, and established Reunion as a not-for-profit plant medicine retreat center in Costa Rica. Establishing Reunion enabled Brad to leverage learning from his business career without the focus on profit, and has provided him with great purpose and meaning. Reunion is here to offer those seeking personal growth, self-acceptance, and healing the opportunities and experiences to create positive change in themselves and therefore create positive change in the world. All are welcome at Reunion, a place to ignite life. Brad, welcome to Rebel Spirit Radio.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah. When I hear that all read like that, it kind of hits me. Yeah. It's been quite the last 4.5 years.
Yeah. Well, I want to begin by asking you about this. My first question is, how did grandmother ayahuasca come into your life?
Well, it literally was really unexpected. I was talking to a friend of mine. He was actually my personal trainer at the time, and he was getting into meditation. And I was just telling him I was really burnt out, needed a holiday, needed to get away. I'm a Canadian, and my days in the U.S. were just about maxed. I didn't want to have to. I can only go 180 days in the U.S. And he said, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a place in Costa Rica. Really, it's a beautiful country. I did yoga and meditation and organic food and ayahuasca. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do ayahuasca, but the rest of it sounds really good. So I had this idea that it was a drug. I thought, but place for just some downtime, different. So a couple of weeks later, I ended up in Costa Rica. And I remember, getting there and hearing about the program and just, understanding that it was an ayahuasca center.
Mm,
And yes, there was meditation, and yes, there was yoga, and yes, there was organic food and some classes and workshops, but really it was all to support the ayahuasca journey.
mm,
So my first text to him was WTF. I'm like, this is all ayahuasca, right? And 3 nights later, my next text to him was, thank you for being my friend.
mm.
Because I did the ceremonies and just had such a profound change, in my own self. And I was there with about 30 other people doing this. And as I talked to them, the same profound change that I had felt they were feeling in their own lives. So that was kind of my introduction to ayahuasca, unexpectedly, but really thankful that it happened.
Now, you said that you were hesitant to start with. So you had no experience with plant medicines before?
No, my only experience was hearing about them,
Uh,
really more from the concept of a drug,
mm,
right? So these are drugs, and I also grew up very in a
mm,
Catholic, very Christian faith. So, anything outside of that, just I was taught was wrong.
mm.
So, going to a country and lying on a mattress and drinking, a plant medicine, just just was against everything I grew up with,
Mm.
and I had such narrow beliefs at the time. So yeah, no, I would have never done this had it not happened the way it did.
Okay. Was there anything that made you change your mind once you were there? What led you to change your mind to say, okay, I will give this a shot?
I think it was more that I was there,
Mm,
right? This is what the center was. I was there. I could see that the people I were with were, you know, people I could relate to.
mm,
They were all just kind of looking to, grow personally, understand themselves better, grow in their own lives. So kind of felt, well, these people I can relate to, and they're doing this. Costa Rica is a very safe country, so
yeah.
I was comfortable there. So it gave me a level of comfort and safety, and then I tried it.
Mm,
And the first night was a challenging one, and so was the second night, and so was the third. They were probably the most challenging experiences, but each one was just so profound that you know I kept going,
yeah.
you know. So that was how I got into it.
Okay. Can you speak a little bit to the actual experience? Because I can speak firsthand as well, having experienced ayahuasca and also being a gay man. I understand a lot of what you went through, but I also know the experience is different for everyone. And it did lead to a profound change in your life.
Yeah, well, for me, my first experience, was with my dad in
Mm,
in ceremony. He and I just never really connected in our lives. I didn't feel his warmth, his embrace. I would say that, I didn't feel that he loved me the way I needed
mm,
to be loved. I think I've certainly come to understand he loved me in the way that he could, but at that point in my life, I was really stuck on the idea, the story that he didn't love me. So I went into that first journey with not even that on my mind, but that's what came up,
mm,
and really went into that, and kind of came out of it with yeah, it was difficult for him to love not only me, it was just difficult for him to love. And by the end of the week, I realized, I was kind of angry that first night, like I grew up not getting what I wanted, what I felt I needed. And after three ceremonies, that final night was just, wow, like he didn't give me this because he didn't have it to give.
mm,
So it really shifted from quite a place of animosity. I was pissed off, and by the end of the week, it was more one of like real empathy, like, wow, he didn't get this either.
mm.
So it wasn't that he deliberately withheld something. I've since come to realize you really can't give something unless you have it,
Right.
right? And that's how he was. So it was really going into that childhood,
Mm,
lack of attention, just not having, those needs met. And it led to a business career of me always trying to prove my self-worth,
mm,
that I was worthy. And I started to see that in the ceremony,
mm.
right? So that was kind of my first experience. It wasn't at that point that, really the idea of being gay or the issue of being gay came up for me. I had buried that one really deep.
Right.
I mean, I remember as a kid, like, swearing that this will never come out,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going to be gay. So it was a couple, subsequent ceremonies that I worked through that.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know exactly how old you are, but I'm assuming that we're kind of the same generation. And it was very difficult. I had to go through a huge process of self-acceptance, and it was painful. It was very, very painful because, now I think current generations have it a little bit easier, but there's still some social stigma with it. So I can definitely see how the medicine can help in that process.
Yeah, well, the medicine just really, showed me, this idea of self-worthiness and how I was always trying to pursue it, and really
Mm.
came to understand that I am worthy, that it's
Right.
it's not about what I do, and really felt like I had some profound shifts in my life. And then one night in an ayahuasca journey, I started to feel just this profound sense of started with dislike. I was like, you really don't like yourself. For me, the medicine it's almost like a conversation,
Mm.
and I heard, you don't really like yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I know, you know. And then it was kind of like, no, you really don't like yourself.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like I know this, like kind of like enough already. And then it was one more time, and it was just like, you hate yourself to the core.
Mm.
And I could just feel, just the self-hatred. Like I literally shook, like someone went boo. Like I was like just a profound sense. I had no idea how deep the self-hatred was.
Mm.
Right. And I remember thinking to myself in the ceremony, this ayahuasca doesn't work.
Mm.
Like here I am, I've done these ceremonies. I thought I was having these profound shifts in my life. And here I am hating myself just to the core of who I am. Right. I remember thinking this is like at a soul level,
Mm.
you know, and what I realized at that point is I've hated, these initial journeys allowed me to get to this place of being able to come to terms with this. And, I always say that the medicine didn't out me when I tell this story. It's really about that the medicine gave me a choice. And, I remember thinking, I'm going home tomorrow. I'm like going back to my life. I was married. I'm going back to my family, like my wife, my existence, and I'm not doing any more ayahuasca. And what I really heard in the medicine is you can do that, right?
Mm.
Or, if you want to live a life more authentically and in more integrity, you can make the choice and move forward and live who you are as a gay man and come out. So I sat with that choice and decided that for me, I wanted to live more authentically. I wanted to live more in integrity, and hiding the fact that I was a gay man from not only really myself, but for the people around me, the ones that love me and that I love, I needed to do this.
Mm.
So that was the journey for me of
Yeah.
plant medicine, of ayahuasca, helping me come to terms with just who I am.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's a remarkable story. And, um, in the bio that I read, there's the line, he has learned that to live more authentically, sometimes one must make decisions that will hurt their hearts to heal their soul. And
Mm,
when I read that, I was like, Amen, brother.
yeah, that one still gets me emotional because
Yeah.
I was married for 25 years,
Yeah.
and I lived this identity of being a straight man.
Mm.
So it was a really, really tough path,
Right.
right? So I've heard it said that, this walk to self-healing, to self, to growth, to transformation, is not an easy path, and
Right.
that's been my experience. I mean, I would never go back, I'd never
Mm.
change it, but it hasn't been an easy couple of years.
Right. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and this is just kind of a general kind of question, but I think it's important. And I know that this is addressed a little bit on the reunion website, but there's this popular idea of ayahuasca that people will go and drink the brew and have these amazing kind of psychedelic experiences, visual experiences. And I know that for me, the first time I drank the medicine, I had none of that. In fact, I've never had I had one little glimpse of something once, but it manifests very differently. And it manifests very differently for each individual. It almost seems like the medicine is individualized. And so I was wondering if maybe you could say a little bit about how the relationship that you have with the medicine, how it
Yeah.
manifests for you.
Yeah, and Nick, I can really relate to that. Every experience with ayahuasca for me has been different and unique, right? I've had the opportunity over the years now many times, and I can't say one has been like the last,
Yeah,
or oh, I've done this before. Each one's really different. What I've heard from the indigenous teachers is that the saying, the medicine gives us what we need, not necessarily what we want,
right,
right? It's a fairly common understanding in the medicine. So I think what we suggest for guests that come to reunion is to let go of these expectations of what this might be like, right? Oh, I've heard this is an amazing trip, and I'm going to see all these images, and I'm going to be in outer space, and you know, just let go of that,
mm,
and really just go into this as a place of surrendering into what is it that you need,
yeah,
and be open to that. There's no way in my first journey with ayahuasca I would have said, let's deal with my dad issues.
yeah,
At the time I was 53. I'm
mm,
57 now. At the time I was 53, I thought I dealt with all this,
mm,
right? So I wasn't going to Costa Rica to deal with some trauma around my childhood. But that's exactly where I needed to be and what I needed to start this journey on. So I'd really suggest to people the medicine gives what we need, not what we think we want, and to
right.
let go of all these expectations and stories. Most of us spend a lifetime with all these stories and expectations, and the medicine's really a chance to just let go of that and
Mm,
trust.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that was what tripped me up the first time was I didn't think that I had expectations, but I had expectations,
Yeah,
But it was
very natural
interesting.
thing. Very natural for all
Yeah.
of us, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What was interesting for me on that first experience though was it manifested externally for me. And I
Mm,
came away with the thought, this is supernatural. There's
mm,
something, there's a spirit here. And what I've learned is exactly what you said is the medicine's going to do what the medicine needs to do and just give myself over to that.
right, right.
Yeah.
I find, for certainly for myself and for a lot of people I talk to, that this medicine, this path, is really about coming back to who we are, you
Mhm.
know, authentically, reuniting with us, with me, right? And that's actually where the name reunion comes from. It's about coming back to ourselves, reuniting with who we are at our essence, at our core, in coming home.
Mm,
you know in some spiritual teachings, it's the idea of coming back to ourselves or remembering who we are.
right.
However you phrase that, it's really about this person, me,
Right.
in how do I want to live my life.
Right. So you had this profound experience and you have had several other ayahuasca retreats. When did you start making all these like professional and personal changes and leading you up to founding Reunion?
Yeah, well, one of the really profound awarenesses that the medicine showed for me is just how much my business career was tied up in my self-worth,
Mhm.
right? I wasn't chasing financial success. I was really chasing self-worth, right? And the way that I chose to do that was starting and growing businesses, and really putting a ton of time into that. I mean, I remember thinking Sundays were the best day to be in the office because there was the least amount of distractions, so I could go in and get a full day of work done before I started the week. I just put a lot in what I saw by doing the medicine, or in one of the journeys, was just how much of me, my identity, was tied up. And I remember thinking in the medicine, or well, that's not me. I've got a number of business friends, and I was like, oh, that's this person, like, or oh, it's also this person, but it's not me, right?
Mm.
And then clearly it really was me. I had so much of myself tied up. So I made the decision that I didn't want to be defined, my self-worth be defined by a business or something I had created externally. So I made the decision to sell the major company I have, or had at the time, and put it up for sale, more just to be free of that drive for self-worth, and not necessarily with the idea that I would sell this and open a retreat center or found a retreat center. It was more just letting go of that. And it was a choice. Some people are always, I hear this, oh, I don't want to do anything that, I don't want to do. I don't want to drink this medicine. And all of a sudden I'm quitting my job, or,
Right.
my experience is the medicine doesn't do things that we don't invite or say yes to. So for me, it was definitely, I wanted to let go of that drive for self-worth. And I sold my major company that I'd been at 25 years.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. So when did you found Reunion?
In 2019,
Okay.
purchased the property. That was kind of at the height of the pandemic.
Right.
But I had gone back to Costa Rica quite a number of times and had the experience to do medicine. And what I just experienced as a guest, the place I was at, is there was a lot of upsells. There was a lot of selling me to come back, selling me on different services. And some of them were quite expensive, very expensive. And my own experience was being deep in the medicine, you're very vulnerable,
Mm.
right? You're dealing with a lot of stuff. And to have these upsells, to be viewing guests as, what's the lifetime value of these guests in that space, just didn't resonate, right? So, I'm experiencing that, and I'm seeing that at the center I was at. And I thought, I think things could be done differently. I have no problem with profit. So, it's, in fact, it's a lifetime of pursuit of profit. But just my own journey to this was, if I could do this with, that found this retreat center with the money that I got from my sale of the business, we could do things differently. So I set it up as a not-for-profit. And we need to be financially sustainable, so enough coming in to cover the bills and to pay. We have a lot of people that work there now, but my own commitment to Reunion is not to take anything out financially, right? So there's no, I don't put expenses through. I don't receive a financial compensation. And what I found for me is it's just changes our motivation. It changes the vibe.
Mm.
So I'm here today talking to you, Nick, not because I want to get another 10 guests through, and that's going to put, X number of thousands of dollars to our bottom line or my bottom line. We're doing this to let people know Reunion is there. It's a center, and if what we're about resonates, come and check us out. So it
Yeah.
just changes the shift of why I'm doing this, and therefore why the organization is doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important because I've noticed that there are, and I've seen this even stateside with some people who will identify themselves as shamans and offer. I knew one person who was in the Hollywood Hills that was offering a 5 gram mushroom, psilocybin mushroom experience for like $1,200. And my thought was, you're not in this to help people heal. You're in this to help make money. And I'm very fortunate that I found a group in the United States that is very legitimate. And I am firmly of the opinion that they're there to help people heal. And it seems, though, that there are a lot of people that are taking advantage of those who may not know much about the medicine or what it entails or how to find someone who's authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. In my experience, the healing, the growth, the transformation, really, I just felt it was so profound,
Mhm.
that the people will pay for that,
Yeah.
right? People will pay for a sense of calm. People will pay for a sense of joy. People will pay for a sense of happiness that they've never really felt before. You
Right.
know, I would pay dearly for this sense of self-worth,
Mm.
so I think, and I've had the experience of being involved, sitting with a center that is a for-profit center that does it very well,
Mm.
in a lot of integrity. So I wouldn't want to, say that
Right.
this is across the board by any
Right.
means,
Yeah.
right? I just know the place that I particularly went to, there was a huge profit motive,
Mm.
and it was really all about how can we make money, right?
Right.
And you know I just think from a safety perspective, from an ability to go deep into this work, it's nice to not have that as an
Right.
overarching motive.
Right. Right. Yeah. And, looking at what you're doing at Reunion, I noticed that integration is central. And it's not just integration at the ceremonies, but it's something that seems to be ongoing. And that's one of the things that I always look for is what is the integration experiences that are offered, because that I think is way more important, maybe, than the actual consuming of the medicine.
Yeah, well, it's the work that we do afterwards. It's the follow through. It's great to have these awarenesses, these insights, these profound shifts in a ceremony, in an ayahuasca ceremony. It's really the following them through and integrating and making these changes into our lives. That's the integration part. So we do have a heavy focus on integration. We have at least a 4 week follow up with each guest afterwards, and then on a monthly basis we have what we call community calls, because the integration just doesn't last. It's not over at 4 weeks. It's an ongoing process. I would say we're constantly integrating, probably integrating our whole lives, into what we're learning and what we're feeling. So for us, it's about trying to support the guests on an ongoing basis, not just while they're with us for that week, but certainly, post the retreat and then on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Well, I think that is crucial and important. And it's also because it's not just that the experience is always with you, but I think the medicine is always with us.
Yeah, yeah, it does cause, at least it did for me, just a real shift, a profound shift.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, Nick, to people that when they're asking, well, what's it like?
Right.
I'm like, if someone says to you, well, what's a sunset like?
Mm.
How would you describe that? Like you'd use words like it's magnificent, it's beautiful, it's, all these things, but it's not like seeing that sunset for yourself. And that's how I
Right.
would describe ayahuasca. You can't really
Yeah.
describe it. It's
Right.
it's something that needs to be experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And again, it's something that's individual for each
Yeah.
person. It's
Yeah. And when I say it, the individual needs to experience it, that's only if they feel called, right?
mm,
So this isn't a everyone should do this,
right.
kind of approach. It was a profound catalyst in my life, and I'm very grateful for that. I see that with the guests that are coming, but there's also the idea that, you know when you're called to the medicine, when it feels right, you
Hmm.
know so we're not out to pitch
Right.
this like everyone should do it. We're really
Right.
more out to say, here's a place that's safe. It's a place that you can do this work with integrity, and if that feels right for you, come down,
Right.
to Costa Rica.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Costa Rica, because I wanted to ask you about the set and setting
Yeah.
of Reunion.
Well, we're fortunate. We were able to get, I was able to purchase a 40-acre property right on the coast, right on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. So we have, just a beautiful piece of land, sunset every night that there isn't clouds, but, year-round sunsets, and we're right on the ocean, and we're right in the middle of a very lush, tropical forest. Dry in the dry season, super lush in the wet season, in full of different birds and mammals and animals. It's just a nice part of the world.
Okay. Well, who is leading the ceremony?
Yeah, it depends on the ceremonies. We play a lot of, so part of my role as I see it as founder, Nick, is to really be aware who serves medicine at reunion. Right.
Mhm.
So I have a profound respect for the medicine. And in my assessment and kind of my awareness is that people really need to be called to serve medicine. They need years of personal growth in really training in this space. Often that is through indigenous lineages. So, a lot of our medicine servers or wisdom keepers, you know, they they're from Peru or from Brazil, right? We're not limited to that.
Mm.
We had a gay men's week, a cultivating pride week, where the individual Alex who was serving medicine has been training for a number of years. He's a U.S. citizen. He would look he doesn't look like your classic shaman, but he spent almost 10 years training and in spending time with these indigenous cultures. And being a gay man himself, it was nice when we did a cultivating pride week and was all gay men, that the person serving the medicine was also from our community.
Right.
So it's really we're aware that this is not just okay. I want to serve some ayahuasca
Right.
and now off we go. We're really aware of not only who serves the medicine, but who makes our medicine, where our medicine comes from. It's really understanding the significance of that.
Yeah.
And the way I demonstrated is, I founded Reunion, so um, I, technically I could sit out there and serve medicine,
Mm.
right? But I don't, because I
Yeah.
know that's not been my calling. It's not been my level of experience, and I have a lot of respect for the medicine. So yeah, so I would say a real heavy mix on the indigenous cultures, but we're not limited to just one way.
Okay.
And that's kind of unique for us because our whole ethos is there's not one path,
Mm.
right? So, what works for me is what worked for me, and I can share that learning if someone's interested and it's maybe helpful. But we're very aware at Reunion. We're not telling people there's a certain way to live your life. There's a
Right.
certain path. You know, it's the whole idea here is you come back to yourself. We're just providing the place, the set and the setting for you to do that. So the same thing would apply with the medicine. I certainly wouldn't say, well, there's only one way to do the medicine and there's only
Right.
one indigenous path to be able to do this. I think it's more a path of being highly aware of this and being very respectful of the lineages
Mm.
in where this medicine has come from.
Right. Yeah, the group that I found, I'm going to call him a shaman, but he never, as far as I know, identifies as a shaman. But he had his training from a Shipibo shaman in Peru. And so during the ceremony, he knows all of the traditional songs, the ikuros, which are sung. So I was kind of curious about that kind of process in the ceremony. It sounds like there, different things happening in the ceremonies because you have different traditions. Is that
Well, our main medicine server is from Peru,
okay?
right? And when he talks to our guests, he tells the story how when he grew up, I mean, this was something that was kept very quiet and very
Mm.
confidential for the community. And even when he went off to university, his father asked him not to speak about the medicine.
Mm.
And he respected that. And after university, he was sitting with the medicine, he was training in these lineages, and he felt a real strong calling to bring these medicines to bring this to the West.
Right.
So you know so he's at reunion because of the calling that he's felt. So I think there has to be a balance between someone calling themselves a shaman after a
Right.
couple of weeks of doing
Right.
medicine, and the only way to do this work is in if I come from an indigenous culture,
Right.
right? And I think everyone sitting with the medicine really needs to assess, is this person I'm sitting with, does it feel right for me? do
Right.
do they feel like they have the experience? Do they feel like there's the right intention?
Yeah.
Right? To your point, does this feel like it's about healing and in growth, or is this an opportunity for someone to take advantage?
Right. And I noticed that also looking at the reunion website that you have, uh, and I'm assuming that you began these. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you're connected with them, but there was a Replenish Ayahuasca project.
Yeah.
and the Indigenous Wisdom Keepers Fund.
Yeah. So we have been able to purchase some land in Peru. It's 200 acres that was about to be put into palm oil production, so that everything was going to be cut down. We were able to purchase that land. It had some ayahuasca growing on it already, or has some ayahuasca growing on it already. And our idea is with Replenish is to replant, to make sure that for future generations these medicines are available. Ayahuasca takes, anywhere from 5+ years before it can be used. So it's a long process. You just don't plant it, today and in somewhere down, the next 12 months you have ayahuasca.
Right.
It's years and years. So yeah, we call it Think and Replenish, and it's going to be on our website coming the new year. And a lot of our guests have asked about it. Hey, if I made a donation, could we plant a vine?
Mm.
And so we're going to maybe try something like that,
All right.
because we are finding people do want to support and support this work in a way that is authentic and actually has meaning. So,
Right.
let's get more ayahuasca grown for future generations.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important as it becomes more popular because there is this tendency of people in the global north or the west, however you want to describe it, of experiencing something and then kind of going in and demolishing the natural habitats. So I think it's really important to have that preservation.
Yeah. Well, think of how many animals we've made extinct or how many
Right.
plants we've made extinct. The last thing we would want is for these medicines to not be available. So yeah, so it's a big initiative for us. We're super excited to be able to do this because it takes a lot of ayahuasca vine
Yeah.
to make a cup of medicine,
Right.
and making sure that there's enough there for our use and future generations is really important to Reunion.
Yeah. And what about the Indigenous Wisdom Keepers Fund?
Yeah, what we really are trying to do is really support the communities from which these wisdom keepers are coming from, right? So, I mean, we do that in the way of cash, because they oftentimes know what's most needed in their own communities, how to use those dollars. So, yeah, the wisdom keepers that work with us and spend time with us, we also like to make sure that we're not only supporting them and their work, that we're also supporting the communities that they're coming from, and that they're oftentimes supporting by going off in doing this work, and in bringing some of those financial resources back to the community.
Okay.
As well, we have a scholarship
Mm.
program,
Yeah.
really significant scholarship program, to try to make it available for as many people as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I was going to ask you about the scholarship
Okay.
fund. Yeah, it's on my notes and it's highlighted here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's an important. I mean, unfortunately, we get such a demand for scholarships. There's
yeah.
only so much that we can do there. But yeah, it's growing. The scholarship fund is growing. We're getting some donations towards that, which is great, and in more people being able to do this work.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I know Reunion offers retreats for everyone who's interested,
Yeah,
but you also have a very specific one for the LGBTQ plus community. So I thought
yeah,
that maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. What we've tried to do is create programs, retreat options that really serve different communities. So there would be like our main ayahuasca week, which is open to all, and is amazing. And we do psilocybin retreats as well. So those would be what we really kind of call our signature programs. There are our normal programs as it were. And then we have a program for leaders and entrepreneurs called Awakening Leadership. And then we have a cultivating pride program for the LGBTQ community. And then in April of this year, we're going to be doing a medical doctors week. So it's a week of medical doctors, led by medical doctors for medical doctors. And then we're also doing a women's week this year as well. But the Cultivating Pride one, we just had our first retreat about a month ago, and we had 30 gay men. That would include the staff, the team. So probably about 25 guests, and 24, 25 guests, and then the staff. And there was 30 gay men doing medicine together, doing ayahuasca together. And me personally, it's the most included I've ever felt, the most welcomed in a community. A lot of the feedback from the guests that were there was this was a profound week.
Mm.
You know, they've often felt like in different circles, like the token gay guy. You know, the token gay guy at a retreat, or the token gay guy at a, whatever they're involved in. So in this case, it was all gay men, gay and queer identifying men in the retreat, and we do want to be able to offer more. We are hoping to put a lesbian week on in August, right? But what we're finding is that's a big alphabet, and just to say, everyone in LGBTQ plus, it's hard to serve the needs of that community unless we make it a little bit more specific.
Okay.
So we started with gay and queer men, and we're going to be doing a lesbian week. And these are not one-offs for us, Nick. We really want to be able to offer 3 and 4 and 5 weeks a year for these different communities,
Right.
right? I think it helps to do this work. I mean, in the indigenous cultures speak of healing in community.
Right.
We're kind of used in North America. I go to my doctor, it's a one-on-one, or I go to my therapist, it's a one-on-one. And those are very helpful, right? But the classic healing in community has a really deep meaning. There's a lot of support in that. So, a week of business leaders, as the people there have common issues, common things they're working with. Certainly my own experience in the Cultivating Pride week, so many of the issues that were brought up, so much of the healing that was happening were issues in healing I could relate to personally.
Right. Yeah, I found it interesting again, just, from being a gay man myself, but also understanding all of the struggles of that. And like I said at the beginning, there's a generational aspect. So I'm curious about the age group that participated in this first Pride, but just in general, there are, these feelings of shame and guilt, and the gay community has, pretty high levels of addiction and these feelings of self-loathing. And it's amazing to have the opportunity to heal that.
Yeah. I would say that the age range of our guests, out of the 30 people, we probably range from 20 to 60,
Okay.
60 plus, just by a
Mm.
little. So a
Okay.
wide age range. The workshops that we put on during the week to support this were one of them was shame, dealing
Yeah.
dealing with shame, you
Yeah.
know, because it's so profound, and that wouldn't be a normal workshop in a in a
Right.
in a regular week for us.
Right.
Not that there isn't a lot of shame felt by a lot of people, but specifically this workshop was about gay shame,
Yeah.
right? And the profound impact that has had on our lives as gay men, and in how hurtful that is, how damaging that is. And it was just so great to see so many people have healing when it
Yeah.
comes to that shame. I wouldn't say it's healed, but certainly it's a journey, and a lot less shame coming out of the week
Yeah.
than we had going in.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The medicine it's very energetic. And I can just imagine the openness in one of these workshops talking about these things and how profound that could be for people.
Yeah. Well, in one of the sharing circles, there was 30 of us in the workshop facilitator, also a gay man, invited everyone that had experienced sexual abuse as a child, just to, if they felt comfortable, to step 1 foot into the circle. And 80% of the guys there stepped forward,
Wow.
you know. So, it's the shame, it's the sexual abuse, it's oftentimes, other kinds of abuse, bullying, that really goes deep. So
Right.
yeah, I hope it's changing, Nick, but when I see someone 22 years of age at our retreat who's not out to his parents because they're so, caught in a religion that's
Right.
convincing him or trying to tell him he's going to go to hell for being gay. And this guy's 22,
Right.
tears in his eyes as he's telling me that his youth pastor rejected him when there was even a hint of him being gay. I mean, this guy's youth pastor,
Yeah.
okay, took his own kids, this guy's friends away from him. I mean, just total rejection for being gay. So I'm not convinced it's let's just do that. We have a long way to go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We have a long way to go, and it was really a great week of healing. We started a WhatsApp group for the.
Mm.
We actually started it beforehand
Yeah.
to introduce everyone, and it's 4 weeks later, and it's going strong. Just some
Yeah.
profound notes from people of how well they're doing.
Yeah, and I think that community aspect is crucial. The group that I've been involved with also has something similar, and we're all considered a family in a way,
Hmm.
and that's how they
Yeah,
refer to us. It's all a family in a sense. But there is, one of the retreats, they always have the chats beforehand to try
right.
to help people get to know each other, and then afterwards, they close it down, but someone's always like, well, let's create our own. And that's still going strong. Several months later, it's still going very, very strong.
Yeah, and that's awesome because these are people that you can relate to, people that have been on a healing journey. For some they use the word healing. I use the word
Yeah.
healing,
Right.
but others it's transformation or personal growth, whatever that word
Yeah.
is.
Right.
Once you've been on an experience with someone, doing
Yeah.
that, there is a bond there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially with ayahuasca because it can be pretty intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be. It
Yeah.
Yeah, very intense often.
Right.
That's sometimes the fear people have with it. But
Right.
we always assure people we're safe. We have a medical license. We have a trained staff. We haven't lost anyone. We're not going to
Yeah.
lose anyone. But trust the process.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also really important to create an atmosphere. And again, this is part of the setting of there's no judgment for anything because there are aspects to the ayahuasca experience that I know a lot of people are, oh no, that may happen. I no, 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 no. But it has to, there has to be no judgment at all.
Right. And that's why we've developed these different programs throughout the year. So,
Yeah.
what really helps to ensure no judgment is when I'm sitting with a group of people in the same situation as me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If I'm a business leader or an entrepreneur and I'm doing medicine with others that I can relate with, then there's not going to be that same level of judgment there, naturally. And the same thing with either being gay or maybe an all women's week, a medical doctor's week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah. That
big
was,
one for judgment. There's a lot of judgment
yeah.
around in the medical community for these medicines, but a
Yeah.
lot of openness is starting to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think there's still cultural resistance. You had mentioned very early on in the conversation how you were against the idea of the drugs.
Hmm.
And I had to have this conversation in a sense. I'm teaching a religion and ecology class at a Jesuit university at the moment, and we were reading Bell Hooks, and she had this essay about tobacco in the South and how it's been sort of bastardized and that it was different for the people growing up that they farmed the land and it was a sacred substance and it was a sacred substance to the indigenous people. And so in the class we had this conversation about sacred medicines
Hmm.
and how why is it that we refer to some substances as drugs versus medicine? And there was resistance from some of the students who, I got an email saying, oh, you're encouraging us to do this. And I'm like, no, let's think about some of the things that Bell Hooks is talking about in terms of like racism and whatnot. And so I think that we've got this larger cultural journey to kind of go on as well, to go from drug to medicine.
Yeah. And one of the things that I, always want to point out is these are plants,
Right.
right? So when you're talking about drugs, these are not pharmaceuticals. These are not manufactured with a whole bunch of different chemicals in that you don't even know how they're interacting.
Right.
Okay. These are plants, right? This is a vine. Okay. In the case of psilocybin, it's a mushroom, right?
Right.
So, I always find it interesting. We've had guests that have been on antidepressants I had one guest I was talking to, had been on antidepressants for 29 years,
Mm.
right? And just to live his life. right? He came off of those to do ayahuasca and has not gone back on, right? So I'm like, so why is it okay that someone can take a pill every day for 29 years to deal with depression, and you drink ayahuasca, you have a profound experience, and you no longer feel that you need that,
Hmm.
right? Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen with everyone, right? But it's not a unique story
Right.
where people are coming off of some of these medicines. Even, I've had a lot of people say, I've lost weight since I did ayahuasca. I'm looking after myself more.
Mm.
I'm not on high blood pressure medications. I have a new respect for me, so you can be on a high blood pressure, you can be on antidepressants, you can be on these things your entire life, and that's considered okay,
Right.
right? I mean, I've talked to some of these medical doctors. I talked to a medical doctor yesterday who said to me that she's reached a stage in her career. She's still active at a hospital. She said she's reached a stage in her career where she's actually thinking she's doing more harm than she is good with the amount of drugs that are being prescribed.
Yeah.
That so much of the issues are our own trauma, our own emotional issues. And drugs just mask all that.
Right.
you know so that's kind of my this is a plant.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also think one of the things that I learned is and this was one of the assumptions I had, was when I first went, and I had my reasons for going, I thought it would be almost like a magic bullet, a
Mm,
miracle cure. And I
right.
would see people online talking about, oh, I've sat with the medicine, like 50 times now. I'm like, why? Why?
Yeah.
And I've had to learn, and I learned very quickly that it is a relationship that you develop with the medicine.
Right. Yeah. And for some people, they will come down to a retreat week, and that's where, that's enough. That's
Yeah.
that's what they're comfortable with. And for other people, it develops more. It's an ongoing relationship.
Yeah.
My own situation, that first week that I sat in a ceremony, a retreat week, I didn't come to terms with living more authentically and in how much I hated myself. That was a further journey for me.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've heard it described as the classic onion. You keep
Yeah.
you keep peeling back the layers, and it's it's interesting for me because it's getting less difficult to do that work. It's actually
Yeah.
becoming more of a joy,
Yeah.
right? Like, wow, like, look at what I've worked through, look what I let go of.
Mm.
you know
Yeah.
in our Cultivating Pride week in particularly, we were talking about letting go of the stories that we've been told, and the stories then that we tell ourselves,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just that we've been told this by society. We then repeat these stories to ourselves,
Yeah.
in letting go of these things that don't serve us. And that's a process that takes time.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Well,
know
that's the ego at play. That's the ego likes to create the stories,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And it oftentimes the stories don't serve us.
Right.
you know
Yeah.
in my case, it wasn't like you're good enough and you're worthy. It was the classic opposite of
Right.
those stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. The power in the medicine is just amazing. But let me ask you, I know that we're running close to out of time. But I wanted to ask you about the psilocybin retreats as well. What's going on with those?
Yeah, we just want to be clear. It's either or, so we don't
Okay.
do the
Yeah.
psilocybin with the ayahuasca.
Yeah, I don't
But
think
we
they would
we
mesh well.
no, no, and but so when we say we do ayahuasca and psilocybin, we're
Yeah.
careful. It's not in the
Right, right.
same
Yeah.
week. One of the real benefits of ayahuasca, of psilocybin, is just so much research coming out of a lot of North American research centers, universities, just showing the profound benefits of psilocybin for so many issues. Obviously big with vets. There's been a lot of support for vets dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. So psilocybin's getting a lot of, talk and a lot of awareness. And also, in order to be able to do psilocybin, you don't have to come off the same level of medications that you do for ayahuasca. So
Right.
for some, it's a medicine in itself, and their medicine would be psilocybin, and others, it's a nice first step. It
Mm.
really depends on the individual.
Okay. Yeah, and so on most of the ceremonies are week long, correct?
Yes, we
Okay.
do Saturday to Saturday, so you can come down and really take some time, oftentimes time away from a busy life to do some self work.
Yeah. And during that week, there are, for ayahuasca, there's 3 ceremonies. Is that correct?
It depends. There's
Okay.
there's a minimum of three, often
Okay.
four. Okay,
Okay.
our average week would actually have four
Okay.
ceremonies. So yeah, and with the night off halfway through the week, just to do a breath work or
Right.
do a different night and
Yeah.
yeah, have a chance to get
Yeah.
ready for a couple more.
Okay. And then with the psilocybin, what is that
Same, you
process?
would the week the cadence looks pretty much the same. Obviously the ceremonies will differ, the medicine differs, but we really try to give a lot of time for sharing circles, a lot of time for movement, yoga in the mornings, a lot of time for a breathwork class. We like to do what we call reunion on the beach, which is a closing ceremony with a fire
Yes.
pit. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so this similar structure, different medicines.
Yeah, I saw that and I really liked that ritual on the beach of kind of letting go of something, burning something away. I think that's
Yeah.
always very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. We often start the week with letting stuff go,
Yeah.
giving it up to the fire, and then often close the week with a fire ceremony as well down by the
Yeah.
beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all very, very powerful. And I applaud you for the work you're doing. I think that it is so crucial right now that, the world needs healing. And, I am of the opinion is, as within, so without. And when we see the state of the world, nature and war and everything, it tells me that humanity needs to do some work,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. Um,
yeah. We do.
yeah. So let me ask you, what do you have coming up? What's coming up next year for reunion?
Yeah, so we have our Awakening Leadership series. We'll have 4 or 5 different retreats throughout 2024 for that. We'll have at least 3 Cultivating Pride for gay and queer men. We'll have a lesbian week in August. We'll have a women's week. We'll have a medical doctors week in April. And in between all of those different unique programs are signature weeks, our regular weeks of either psilocybin or ayahuasca.
Okay. That leadership would be really interesting because I think a lot of our corporate leaders would benefit from something like this.
Yeah, yeah, I can tell you that the people that have been through, the profound thing is they have benefited,
Yeah.
right? Really, a lot of people are looking from a leadership perspective is how do I be more of a conscious leader?
Mm,
I'm still leading an organization. I'm still in business. We're still having to drive to a bottom line. But how can I do that in a way that's more conscious for the organization and more conscious for ourselves,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So awakening leadership, but I'd probably add the word awakening conscious leadership or
Yeah.
developing conscious leadership. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people have that. They just want to take it, they want to take it further and they want to take it deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be interesting to see uh, that change in people, but also the change in the businesses themselves. I think
Yeah.
that's crucial. It's the ripple effect, right? That all of this
It,
will ripple out.
yeah. Well, every week we don't do large groups at
Right.
reunion, so we keep the groups small.
Hmm.
But whenever there's a guest there, it's not just the guests, it's the 10 people they're going to go home to or the 20
Right.
people they're going to go home to. In these changes we make in ourselves do have that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we're getting a lot of I guess actually that are word of mouth referrals
Right.
from people that have been there and
Yeah.
in talking about us.
Right. Yeah, and I imagine that you would probably get, people who come back as well because, those who feel called to have that relationship with the medicine.
Yeah, yeah, we do ask people to wait 30 days before they
Right.
rebook, just to not race right back into this. Where I was before, there was an on-site rebooking team, so you were kind of
Mm.
being
Yeah.
rebooked before you even left, and that just doesn't resonate with
Right.
what we do at Reunion. We encourage you to take. I mean, we'd love to have you back. Just make sure you take some time to integrate
Yeah.
this first, and
Yeah.
and and we're not going anywhere. We'll be there. We'd love to have the guests back for sure, but just take some time. Don't There's no pressure to rebook.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't imagine that having the experience and then someone's like, okay, when are you going to come back? That would be, yeah, I'd be like, no, I need some time here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can people go to find out about reunion?
Yeah, the best place would be our website, reunionexperience.org, O-R-G. That has a list of our programs. If people want to book a discovery call, there's a connection there to do that, to talk to someone further. Sometimes people are, well, is ayahuasca or is it
Mm,
psilocybin? So we can answer some of those questions a little bit more in
yeah.
depth on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, and it seems to me that it would also be important to do just a little bit of screening as well to see, why someone is wanting to do this.
Yeah, and we do a really in-depth medical intake,
Mm,
right? Making sure, first of all, they're healthy enough to do this,
right,
and that they're in a psychological place that they're able to do the medicine as well,
right.
right?
Yeah,
There are some individuals, unfortunately, that just aren't at a place health-wise that these medicines at this time could be taken safely.
yeah. And there's also the case that some medicines there's a contraindication, so
Yep,
they would have to stop taking some medicines, and that's something that I don't know that everyone is aware of this, that there's a process beforehand. There's a dieta that you have to get on, especially for the ayahuasca, not so much with psilocybin.
right.
You have to give up certain things. Uh,
Yeah, certainly food wise, and
yeah,
for particularly for ayahuasca, and somewhat so
yeah,
for psilocybin, certainly
yeah,
different medications. You don't want to be mixing with these plant medicines. But we definitely go through all that on the intake.
yeah,
We have a full-time nurse on the property that helps on all our intakes, and then our medical advisors, our doctors, North American doctors, just to make sure that we can do the proper screening. Yeah,
right,
and if you're not ready to do this now, there's always some time down the road, right?
right,
So
right.
we want to make sure people are healthy and can do this in a really safe way.
Yeah, and I imagine I didn't ask you this, but it just came to mind that during the actual ceremony that there would be a number of facilitators there to help people as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's a large team, right? Everyone from helping a guest to a restroom to helping during ceremony if someone's having a challenging time. But definitely that's why we keep the group small. Like
Right.
we don't do 80 or 90 people in a ceremony. We keep it way smaller than that, just so that we can make sure that the support is there to the individual guests.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't imagine doing this in a group of 80 or 90 people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my own experience, having a smaller group
Yeah.
is really beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it allows for that community. I think it's much more difficult to develop a community when you've got a massive group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice when you can get to know, and even for our facilitation team, for the people at Reunion to, with a smaller group, you can get to know everyone's name and you get to
Right.
connect individually. You get
Yeah.
into the 70, 80s or 90s. You can't keep track of that many names.
Yeah. So what's the average group size? About,
Probably around 23,
yeah.
25. Our high would be 35.
Okay.
This particular week we have 33 people in the ceremony. So that's kind of reaching the max. On the awakening leadership, we go a little larger
Mm,
because we can accommodate that, but never what we would call a large group.
okay. All right, wonderful. Well, Brad, thank you so much for speaking with me today. Again, I applaud the work that you're doing. I think it's very valuable. The world needs healing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate being able to come on your show and getting the word out that Reunion is there if people feel the call.
And that's a wrap on episode 115 of Rebel Spirit Radio. Thank you so much for listening or watching if you're part of my YouTube audience. Now, you know what's coming, all the usual. Sign up for my Patreon, share this with friends, family, coworkers, and on social media. Subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to listen to or view podcasts. You know the grind. But here's the thing, all of that is really important. Putting this podcast together takes quite a bit of time and effort. Right now, it's a labor of love. I'm in the process of making changes to improve the podcast and the YouTube channel. It's slow going, but your support will help me speed up the process and ensure that I can continue with the podcast and offer much more content than what I provide now. As I always say, I'm here in the Front Range doing missionary work in regards to religion, spirituality, and ecology, psychedelics and consciousness, and how all of this can help us heal humanity's sacred relationship with the living earth.
So if you feel moved by the rebel spirit, and you know I sure hope that you do, then please, by all means, help me in my efforts to share the good news. I'm Nick Mather, and you've been listening to or watching Rebel Spirit Radio. Until next time, may you be in peace, may you flourish in all possible ways, and may you continue to nurture your rebel spirit.